Hi everyone, welcome to Sandy Frank's political podcast for a people's revolution against the corporate fascist state. I am your host, Sandy Frank, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but mainly we're going to be talking about the latest Wikileaks release from Vault7 on CIA hacking of iPhones and various other things. They released a new batch of leaks today, March 23rd, 2017. And today we're going to be looking at just exactly what is in these leaks, and we're going to be talking about the cover-up of the corporate media controlled by the deep state and the CIA, who want to portray the deep state as something that doesn't exist, something that only exists in the imagination of Steve Bannon, which is ridiculous. We have people like Chris Hedges and Noam Chomsky and Glenn Greenwald and so many other people who talk about the deep state, but we see this full-on corporate propaganda campaign about portraying anyone who talks about the deep state as a conspiracy theorist, when they are the conspiracy theorists for their nonsense, unproven nonsense about Russia and a Putin connection and all this. It's a complete hypocrisy. But let's look at the WikiLeaks release. Vault7 projects, Dark Matter, March 23rd, 2017. Today, March 23rd, 2017, WikiLeaks releases Vault7 Dark Matter, which contains documentation for several CIA projects that infect Apple Mac firmware, meaning the infection persists even if the operating system is reinstalled. Developed by the CIA's Embedded Development Branch, EDB, these documents explain the techniques used by CIA to gain, quote, persistence on Apple Mac devices, including Macs and iPhones, and demonstrate their use of EFI/UEFI and firmware malware. Among others, these documents revealed the, quote, sonic screwdriver project, which, as explained by the CIA, is a, quote, mechanism for executing code on peripheral devices while a Mac laptop or desktop is booting, allowing an attacker to boot its attacked software, for example, from a USB stick, quote, even when a firmware password is enabled. The CIA's sonic screwdriver infector is stored on the modified firmware of an Apple Thunderbolt 2 Ethernet adapter. Quote, Dark Sea Skies is, quote, an implant that persists in the EFI firmware of an Apple MacBook Air computer and consists of, quote, dark matter, quote, CP, and, quote, night skies, respectively EFI, kernel space, and user space implants. Documents on the Triton Mac OS X malware, its infector DarkMatter, and its EFI persistent version DirStark are also included in this release. While the DirStark 1.4 manual release today dates to 2013, other Vault7 documents show that as of 2016, the CIA continues to rely on and update these systems and is working on the production of DirStark 2.0. Also included in this release is the manual for the CIA's Night Skies 1.2, a quote, beacon / loader / implant tool for the Apple iPhone. Noteworthy is that Night Skies had reached 1.2 by 2008 and is expressly designed to be physically installed onto factory-fresh iPhones, i.e., the CIA has been infecting the iPhone supply chain of its targets since at least 2008. While CIA assets are sometimes used to physically infect systems in the custody of a target, it is likely that many CIA physical access attacks have infected the targeted organization's supply chain, including by interdicting mail orders and other shipments, opening, infecting, and resending, leaving the United States or otherwise. So that's the release from that WikiLeaks put out. We're going to look at a few articles and videos kind of explaining what these things are. So we're gonna read an article from RT. You know, we could look at the WikiLeaks, but they have the leaked documents are sonic screwdriver. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really the one to go through these documents and try to explain anything technical. Let's look at the actual named documents they have. So they have the leaked documents of sonic screwdriver, Stark 1.4, Stark 1.4 RC1 / IVVRR checklist, then Triton 1.3, and lastly, Dark Sea Skies 1.0 URD. So, we're going to look at RT, an article from RT, going into a little bit more explanation of these. All right, so Vault7, hashtag Vault7, WikiLeaks releases Dark Matter batch of CIA hacking tactics for Apple products. WikiLeaks has released the latest batch of documents in its Vault7 series of documents related to the CIA's espionage programs. The latest release, dubbed Dark Matter, reveals the specific techniques used to target Apple products. The release discloses the alleged details of methods employed by the CIA to compromise devices manufactured by Apple, including the iPhone and MacBook Air. In a statement from WikiLeaks, the whistleblower group said, Thursday's Dark Matter leak includes details of the sonic screwdriver project described by the CIA as a, quote, mechanism for executing code on peripheral devices while a Mac laptop or desktop is booting. The techniques named in the release detail methods that could allow devices to be compromised between the manufacturing line and the end user, or by a CIA asset in close proximity to a target. The projects, developed by the CIA's Embedded Development Branch, EDB, attack Apple's firmware, meaning that any infections are persistent regardless of efforts to remove them, including if the operating system is reinstalled. WikiLeaks said this allows an attacker to boot its attack software from a USB stick onto a device even when a firmware password is enabled on the device, meaning the read-only memory of a device can be modified using sonic screwdriver. The infector is stored in the Apple Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter, WikiLeaks claims. The latest leak consists of 5 documents: sonic screwdriver, Stark 1.4, Stark 1.4 RC, Triton 1.3, and Dark Sea Skies 1.0. Let me just look. Within the release tranche is a tool known as Night Skies. which allows the CIA to infiltrate factory-fresh iPhones and track and control them remotely, granting, quote, full remote command and control to the CIA. Night Skies allows the CIA to take files from iPhones, including details from the owner's phone book, text messages, and call logs. The revelation that the CIA is physically infiltrating factory-fresh phones suggests it has accessed an organization's supply chain, meaning they may be intercepting the phones as they are shipped to the targets, with CIA agents or assets tampering with subjects' phones before they have even been received. Also including in the documents are details about a number of other tools employed by the CIA to infiltrate Apple products. Affording the CIA a variety of command and control capabilities. Dark Sea Skies is an implant that is found in the firmware of an Apple MacBook Air that runs in the background and allows the CIA command and control capabilities over a targeted device. A 2009 user requirements document on Dark Sea Skies details how assets should install Dark Sea Skies. The second data dump comes 2 weeks after Assange said WikiLeaks will give tech companies exclusive access to leaked information they obtained from the CIA in the first part of Vault 7, known as 0 Day. Just a little more insight into the capabilities of what these documents reveal. And let's look at another article from RT, I think on the same subject from today. So this is from Julian Assange's press conference, which there were a lot of glitches and whatnot involved. So let's look at what this has to say. Hashtag Vault7. Assange says WikiLeaks Dark Matter leak is a small example of what's in store. Julian Assange answered questions on WikiLeaks' latest release in Vault 7 named Dark Matter, as well as the CIA's ever-changing role and the impact this has on world affairs. The second release in the series details the techniques that WikiLeaks claims are employed by CIA assets to compromise Apple devices between the manufacturing line and the end user. Dark matter is just a small example of material to come, Assange said, speaking via Periscope. In light of these leaks, Assange warned how the CIA continues to be an agency that responds on the world, and then, quote, commits actions to overthrow governments and influence elections. Quote, since 9/11, the CIA has undertaken the NSA as the budgetary dominant intelligence agency within the U.S., Assange said, resulting in increased, quote, institutional ambitions for the CIA to the point where it is now commanding Air Force resources, Assange claimed, citing their control of drones as an example. Quote, it is in some ways rivaling the FBI, he said, quote, by being an armed force outside the United States conducting interrogations, renditions, and torture. When answering a question from Fox News on so-called demands made by WikiLeaks to tech companies before handing over details of the alleged CIA exploits, Assange answered that, quote, demands is a strange word to use, quote, these exploits that are used by the CIA can affect millions of people, so it has to be done cautiously. There has to be security channels involved, and there has to be agreements that the vendors will in fact be responsive. Assange said WikiLeaks did not publish all details of the hacking techniques revealed in the leaks, as it would result in both the, quote, good guys and the, quote, bad guys getting them at the same time. The second release is the series details the techniques that WikiLeaks claims are employed by the CIA assets to compromise Apple devices between the manufacturing line and the end user. On the alleged demands, Assange said a standard industry 90-day time frame was given to tech companies for them to provide encryption keys to WikiLeaks in order for them to communicate details of the exploits. Assange said Microsoft contacted WikiLeaks on March 20th without, quote, agreeing to the standard terms. On the same day, Google also contacted the whistleblower group, refusing to agree to WikiLeaks terms, which Assange claims are standard, instead providing their own terms and a PGP encrypted email. He did not give details on Microsoft and Google's requested terms, but alluded to their, quote, revolving door relationship with military and security contractors as reasons for their reluctance. Assange said any fixes required by tech companies should take a few weeks, and that the 90-day time frame is sufficient. He added that if a company contacted them requesting more time, they'd be open to discussion. So, WikiLeaks did, I'm gonna see if we could get a little bit of the press conference from today. The Dark Matter Vault7. No, it doesn't look like we can get it, but, let's see what else we can find on this. That looks like everything from RT. This might be the same thing. We're gonna look at. Did I just look at this? So let's look at another from RT. CIA's Night Skies tool can hack remotely control iPhones without user knowing. WikiLeaks has released the CIA's alleged ability to infiltrate and control iPhones through a tool called Night Skies, which is physically installed onto factory fresh iPhones and allows the CIA to monitor and download files from targets' phones undetected. The revelation is part of WikiLeaks' latest Vault7 release named Dark Matter. Night Skies works in the background and grants, quote, full remote command and control to the CIA, allowing it to upload and download files from iPhones, including details from the owner's phone book, text messages, and call logs, and to execute actions on the phones as it wishes. In the press release regarding the latest Vault7 leak, WikiLeaks claims the Night Skies, quote, is expressly designed to be physically installed onto factory fresh iPhones. A 2008 document featured in the release explains that Night Skies 1.2 must be physically installed and will only start beaconing information once the user starts to use the phone. We got something from Night Skies of WikiLeaks release. So they say Night Skies 1.2, a tool physically installed onto factory fresh iPhones which allows the CIA to infiltrate, track, and control phones remotely and undetected. So implant. The implant is physically installed on the phone and runs undetected in the background. Listening post. Dropbox for information, receives packages from target's phone. Packages remain encrypted for security, and then post-processing processes information received by LP, occurs in a secure environment, decrypts and processes information. And that's a breakdown of the three components used in Night Skies. CIA tool installed on new iPhones to allow monitoring and manipulation. And continuing the RT article, Night Skies is made up of three components: an implant, a listening post, and a post-processing program. The implant runs undetected on the phone once it has been physically installed. The CIA monitors the phone for activity, including its browser history, YouTube video cache, or mail metadata. Once it is used for the first time, Night Skies kicks in and sends information to be pre-configured LP. LPs are used to monitor devices such as computers and phones which have been hacked with the CIA's malware implants. They can be physically or virtually and stored on a CIA computer server. The Night Skies LP works as a Dropbox for information. It is unable to decrypt the packages it receives in order to maximize security should the LP be compromised. The post-processing component handles the information received by the LP from the implant in the phone. It, quote, is intended to occur in a secure environment, and decrypts and processes the, quote, payload received from the target's phone. Certain limitations are mentioned in the document, with the CIA warning that, quote, if the target does not use any application that we monitor, mobile Safari, mobile mail, mobile maps, etc., then it is possible the beacon may not be triggered by the target. A, quote, fail-safe trigger exists to bypass this problem, but it would be far more conspicuous to any targets and would be a last resort in cases of inactivity on the aforementioned apps. The revelation that the CIA is physically infiltrating factory-fresh phones suggests it has accessed the organization's supply chain, meaning they may be accessing phones as they are shipped to targets, with CIA agents or assets physically tampering with suspects' phones before they even receive them. The fact that Night Skies was on version 1.2 by 2008 suggests it had been employed before then. The document references a 1.1 version and explains that Night Skies has the capability to self-upgrade once installed. So, a lot more information on that specific program, Night Skies. Let's see what else we can look at in terms of. Let's see. There was another one. There was another one I saw. Not from RT. We're probably gonna watch a video from. Bear with me, folks. We're just trying to look. Alright, so this is from Truth Dig from Lauren McCauley. Latest Wikileaks dump shows CIA hacking iPhones since 2008. On the heels of its CIA hacking bombshell, WikiLeaks on Thursday published another trove of documents outlining how the spy agency has been uploading secret software to Apple devices dating back to 2008. Named Dark Matter, the latest release shows that the CIA has been infecting iPhones since shortly after the product's launch in June 2007, and in some cases, interdicted mail orders and other shipments to open, infest, and resend devices leaving the United States. In its press statement, WikiLeaks said it was noteworthy that the Night Skies program, said to be a, quote, beacon/loader/implant tool for the Apple iPhone, had reached 1.2 by 2008 and is expressly designed to be physically installed onto factory-fresh iPhones, i.e. the CIA has been interfering with the iPhone supply chain of its targets since at least 2008. TechCrunch observes, it was quite powerful as Night Skies could access your address book, SMS conversations, and call logs in order to upload it to the CIA's servers. The agency could also execute commands on the iPhone remotely to install new tools and more. Quote, while CIA assets are sometimes used to physically infect systems in the custody of a target, it is likely that many CIA physical access attacks have infected the targeted organization's supply chain, including by interdicting mail orders and other shipments, opening, infecting, and resending, leaving the United States or otherwise, WikiLeaks noted. This technique was something that had been previously hinted at in documents released by National Security Agency whistleblower Edward Snowden. Among other capabilities, according to the outlet, the second batch of Vault7 documents reveal the so-called sonic screwdriver project, which, quote, as explained by the CIA, is a mechanism for executing code on peripheral devices while a Mac laptop or desktop is booting, allowing an attacker to boot its attack software, for example, from a USB stick, even when a firmware password is enabled. Pedro Valaca, a security researcher who specializes in Apple computers, told Vice Motherboard that it appears that the CIA agents were, quote, very early adopters of this kind of hacking technology. The document dump shows many of the CIA's older hacking techniques, but TechCrunch points out that it remains, quote, unclear if some of them still work today. So, it's kind of more of this same information. Just trying to see what else new we can look at before we get on to what else is coming out of the corporate media about trying to prevaricate this issue, trying to make it seem like it doesn't exist, or otherwise denying it completely. That's how it usually goes for the corporate media. They'll deny it completely, and, it will reach a critical mass, and, they must get crazy phone calls by their brainwashed viewership who, are not bad people, but, they see these stories and they see CNN not talking about it. They must be like, what is happening? They must be troublesome. It's Brandolini's law, people. It is it's what you call it takes less energy to create the bullshit, and it takes more energy to disprove the bullshit. And especially when these people have all the power, as in they control the media, they control what people think. A small sliver of what they own. They own everything, but it's a ridiculous time we live in, where corporate media, deep state controlled corporate media entities, can totally usurp all the power we have. So now I want to get into another article from Caitlin Johnstone. We have a real type of release, bombshell, leak, trove from WikiLeaks today. But what the corporate media has tried to do is they've seen how everybody's believing the WikiLeaks, and so they've tried to, with this Russia story, this Putin story, this crazy story that's now being branched out to Bernie Sanders supporters, and it was Jill Stein supporters, but with Rachel Maddow's ridiculous Macedonian dick pill thing that it was sent brainwaves through Facebook to make people hate Hillary Clinton. Let's counter some of this fake Russia conspiracy nonsense. So Caitlin Johnstone of Newslog, the article is, why the fuck would the Trump camp need to approve Russian hacking releases? If you thought America's fact-free McCarthyist feeding frenzy couldn't get any more demented, I envy your optimism, but you were profoundly wrong. CNN has broken a story that is now being circulated throughout establishment media outlets, asserting that people involved in the Trump campaign were in contact with the Russians who allegedly hacked the emails of the Democratic Party officials and gave a thumbs up to Russian operatives to release the information when it was ready. The story follows the typical formula we've all become used to by now, in which anonymous sources make vague but clickbait-friendly allegations couched in equivocations like, quote, though officials cautioned that the information was not conclusive, and, quote, officials who spoke to CNN said it's premature to draw the inference from the information gathered so far since it's largely circumstantial, which has proven a valuable tactic for the stoking of the flames of the Russia hysteria due to the inherent impossibility of disproving or corroborating such claims. That's not an advantage in this case, however, because anyone with even the remotest capacity for critical thinking can see an immediately obvious plot hole in the narrative. Why would anyone in the Trump camp need to give a thumbs up to Russian operatives in order for them to leak information they'd hacked? Why in the name of actual fuck would that be a step that anyone involved needed or wanted to take? If the Russians did indeed pilfer the Democratic emails, parentheses, friendly reminder that we've still been shown exactly zero proof that they did, end parentheses, and they preferred President Trump over President Clinton, why would they need to interact with anyone within the Trump campaign to release them to Wikileaks? Do they think the Russians need to be told when the U.S. elections were taking place or something? I mean, how do these McCarthyists imagine that going down exactly? Michael Flynn, did you hack the DNC as you were planning to, Boris? Boris, yes, I did. It would be beneficial to both our interests if I released them near the U.S. election, but I figured I'd call and make sure that's okay with you first, just cuz. Michael Flynn, well, that makes perfect sense. Yes, you have our approval to do the thing that you would definitely do, or with or without our approval. Boris, thank you. May I eat lunch and use the toilet as well? Michael Flynn, yes, I approve that also. This is just the latest addition to a seemingly endless torrent of plot hole riddled stories being spoon-fed to the trusting public in order to manufacture consent for escalating tensions with Russia, and for ensuring that the Democratic Party will never have to move even an inch to the left on economic issues by distracting from the massive changes the party's progressive base has been screaming for ever since the deliberately sabotaged Sanders campaign. We're really meant to believe that Vladimir Putin had some sort of magical crystal ball which accurately predicted that Donald Trump would win the presidency early enough to begin buttering him and his associates up to commit acts of treason in the future. But that is this same crystal ball also failed to predict that the ensuing McCarthyist witch hunt would escalate tensions and make any subsequent collaborative relationship with the Trump administration politically impossible. We're seriously meant to believe that a billionaire had to make pacts with a foreign government in order to gain access to the services of professional hackers. People are actually swallowing this crap, though. That's what's even crazier. Perhaps partly due to the efficiency of the propaganda machine and partly due to the way critical thinking has been criminally underemphasized in American classrooms. This blatant falsified Trump-Russia election collusion narrative has been espoused as fact in the majority of liberal discourse. Check out Our Politics on Reddit right now, and you'll see page after page after page of it with no tolerance for dissent whatsoever. It's blue church doctrine. Yeah, Reddit is horrible. The fake news psyop failed in many ways, but it was successful in one pernicious aspect. By deliberately conflating sources, parentheses, primary documents, interviews, video footage, audio, etc., with outlets, newspapers, pundits, websites, news shows, and making them the same thing in the minds of the American public. People don't check sources anymore. They simply fact-check the name of the publication. Does the name of a publication appear on the approved reading list of the state? If so, then it is considered a good source, regardless of the actual sources it used in the article. Very true. So now, all the establishment has to do is to seed a lie in a reputable publication, and then off the back of that being a reputable source, the other publications and pundits can report it as fact in a kind of news laundering operation that would make Al Capone seem like a stand-up, straightforward guy. It really does seem that people will believe anything as long as it comes out of the face hole of someone authoritative. It's strange to see my fellow Gen Xers fall in line with this nonsense. We were the generation that made independent thinking and alternative culture mainstream. But I guess therein lies the rub. We were all so desperate to be different that we became the same. The symbols of our rebellion, that tattoos, the colored hair, the piercings, just hide regular old people conservatism now under a tuft of pink hair and a self-righteous attitude. And we're just as susceptible to the guilt and fear manipulations of establishment as our parents were. The only difference now, and it is a significant one, is that the wide-awake ones can collaborate and embolden each other because of the internet. People like us used to just have to hold their tongues for fear of shunning, no matter what their friends and family were babbling what craziness was going on around them. Most of them have died without ever having spoken to anyone else who would see what they saw. We don't have to walk this path alone anymore. We are finding each other at greater rates than ever before, and our voice is becoming louder and stronger every day. The louder you speak, the more easily we can find you. Speaking your truth out loud in an unmitigated way is twofold. You become a siren for truth, and that siren will alert the asleep ones to the impending danger. But it will also draw the awake ones to you as well. So just say it. Say it big and strong. Say it like your life depends on it, because it does. We will find you. That's a great article. Great. Yeah, she's good at like calls to arms, but that's a lot of that's very true. You know, think about human history of people who had maybe read like one book and knew a bunch of bullshit at the Thanksgiving table was just fascist propaganda. These people, how many billions of people have died and without ever with their entire lives being intimidated into saying what they believed, because we live in such a, and have always lived in such a fascist culture. This is the story of human history right now, and we need to stand up, and we need to protect those people who are speaking truth, like Julian Assange and Wikileaks. We need to organize. Really, it's about organizing our movement in a way we've never been able to do before in human history, because of this technological advance of communication and information gathering, the internet, and so much more. So that's our goal, to organize a movement that can create a viable alternative media and a viable alternative movement to counter the money interests with all the money and all the power and all the ability. I just want to read another Caitlin Johnstone article. It's not really about WikiLeaks or anything. It's about, I just thought it was funny and I want to read it. It's about, I didn't want to read it because I don't really give a shit about Chelsea Clinton, and I don't want the Clintons to be in the media anymore, but it's a pretty funny article, so I'm going to read it. The Clinton-directed Daily Beast doesn't think you should believe in the deep state. This is this one. Okay. The Daily Beast, whose corporate owner is co-directed by Chelsea Clinton, has made another contribution to the steadily mounting gaslighting campaign to convince the American public that the deep state is not a thing. In an article consisting of approximately 80% empty vitriol and 20% straw man arguments, The consistently awful Michael Weiss attempts to advance the notion that because the head of the FBI testified before Congress and said that the Bureau is investigating Russiagate, the deep state could not possibly exist. It is unclear from the article what mental gymnastics Weiss needed to do in order to make this feel true for himself, but his argument is a complete misrepresentation of what the deep state is. The term refers to the self-evident fact that there are power structures which remain in America amid the comings and goings of elected representatives. The man who first popularized the term in America includes among the components of those power structures the donor class, the military-industrial complex, the intelligence community, national security institutions, and of course, the mainstream media, whom Weiss is employed by. Due to its immensely powerful ability to influence the way Americans think and vote, the mainstream media is plainly one of the strongest arms in the deep state power structure. The extensive amount of collusion that Wikileaks revealed between mainstream media outlets and the establishment candidate Hillary Clinton made it clear that there are power structures which have a tremendous influence over American affairs. It's not a uniform, coordinated thing where everyone's on the same side in all ways, and it's certainly not the secret cabal of Illuminati that the mainstream media is trying to spin it as. It's just the result of the simple and undeniable fact that you don't need to be an elected official to have power in America, and that people who have power tend to make alliances. A very important point. Some of those people in power plainly have it in for Trump. People who have power tend to make alliances. What did George Carlin say? You have to be a kooky conspiracy theorist to think that people with power get together and plan things. Absolutely. A very great George Carlin quote. The Daily Beast article is just the most recent and most cartoonish of the, quote, "there is no deep state" spin pieces the corporate media has been desperately churning out with greater and greater frequency as the official narrative keeps getting undermined. There's one from Salon, one from LA Times, one from the New York Times, boldly titled, "What Happens When You Fight a Deep State That Doesn't Exist?" And then Samantha Bee, that hack. Here's comedian establishment propagandist Samantha Bee jumping on the train a few days ago. If you want to spend some time not laughing and feeling so manipulated, you'll want to take a shower afterwards, which is really how this makes you feel. People like Samantha Bee and Trevor Noah, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert just make you want to vomit. They are real propagandists. All to convince the American people to not pay attention to the very glaringly obvious fact that there are powerful groups in the United States who are not democratically elected. Not that long ago, the ruling class dominated their subjects by simply forbidding dissent on pain of torture and death. The trouble with this was that it invariably led to public resentment, which expends a lot of energy and runs the risk of winding up on the business end of the guillotine blade. The great Noam Chomsky once wrote that the smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. And that is exactly what has happened. The proles are given the illusion that they have every freedom within reason, while their opinions are being deliberately manipulated every single day and their spectrum of acceptable ideas is being artificially limited. This has created a very energy-efficient system of domination, where all new income can be funneled to the plutocrats who rule the nation while the unwashed masses who turn the gears of their machines slowly choke to death under the burden of the Walmart economy. Luckily, the internet is rapidly expanding the available spectrum of public opinion, and the ruling elites cannot shut it down without forever shattering the energy-efficient illusion of freedom that they've worked so hard to establish. 2016 was the first time in American history that the official narrative was dealt a blow so significant that it actually caused movement in the nation's power structure. The deep state is doing everything it can to bring the public narrative back under control, but now it's fighting an administration whose leader is actively disrupting that narrative every day on one front and an increasingly internet-savvy populace on another, all while our ability to network and share information keeps getting exponentially more efficient. This is an exciting time to be alive. The revolution will not be televised. Stay untuned. Another very interesting call to arms from Caitlin Johnstone, trying to counter the anti-WikiLeaks propaganda that the corporate media is an industry. It's just an industry of bombardment of lies and non-fact-based material just constantly. And the only way that we're ever going to counter that in any real way, besides taking it down through, there are a lot of methods of taking it down, but another way of it is creating our own alternative movement that can coalesce, not just a bunch of